Chairman, I can confirm we're now live.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome everyone to this remote meeting of the Planning Committee. Please note that the meeting is being broadcast and recorded. This is a meeting of the Planning Committee which has been convened to consider 3 applications which have previously been the subject of a meeting of the Planning Committee advisory meeting, which was held on the 17th of June. That meeting was held in accordance with the Council's current procedures, which were agreed at Annual Council on the 28th of April 2021. As members were unable to reach a decision in each of these 3 matters in accordance with officer recommendations, our current procedure requires that the matter is now considered by a formal public meeting of this committee. I'm obliged to remind any member present this evening who has also participated in the advisory meeting to reconsider each application with an open mind, taking account of any additional information presented. Please note the normal rules of debate apply, including the requirement for you to be present for the duration of the whole debate. So if you're absent for any part of the debate, then you should abstain from the voting. With that said, let's move on to the first item on the agenda. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. I have apologies from Councillors Dr. Barnard, Bandari, Birch, Brown, Badibo, Green, Hayden, Mrs. Mattick, Mrs. Mackenzie Boyle, Mossam, Parker and Skinner.
Thank you. Members of the committee, please turn on your microphone and confirm you're present only when Hannah calls your name. Please do not turn on your cameras. Anyone who does not respond will be recorded as giving their apologies. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you. Councillor Angel.
Present.
Councillor Brossard.
Present.
Councillor Dudley.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Hayes.
Present.
Councillor Virgo.
Present.
Thank you. Agenda item 2 is to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of the Advisory Planning Committee held on the 17th of June. Before I ask Councillor Brossard to second the motion, please indicate in the meeting's chat if you have any issue with the accuracy. Councillor Brossard, are you happy to second that motion?
I am indeed. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Brossard. Nobody has indicated that they have an issue. Therefore, I take that as agreed. Agenda item 3 is to do with disclosure of pecuniary interest or an affected interest to declare. Please indicate, and I will come to you in turn if you have a disclosable or pecuniary interest. There are none. So therefore, we move on to agenda item 4 to consider any urgent items. Hannah?
No, none notified, Chair.
Thank you. So we move on to agenda item 5, which is Crown Land east of Swinley Road, Ascot. That's over to, no, it's not Joe because she's not there. It's Trevor. Thank you, Trevor. You're muted, Trevor.
Hello, Chair. Can you hear me now?
Indeed.
Thank you. I'm afraid, as you say, that Joe isn't available this evening, so I've been plucked from the subs bench to do the presentation myself. It's the first time I've done this, so please be gentle with me, and I hope I can work the equipment okay. I won't try and repeat Joe's detailed presentation to the advisory meeting, but instead will provide a brief introduction to the site and the proposed development before summing up the main issues. I'll now share my screen. Can you see that?
Not currently, Trevor. We can't see a presentation.
Oh, sorry, just bear with me. Right. Can you see that now?
Yes, thanks, Trevor.
All right, good. So this application is being reported to the committee at the request of Councillor Brunel Walker. It seeks temporary planning permission for the use of the site for filmmaking, including the creation of a film set, provision of a base unit to provide facilities for those working on the site, and associated parking. The site lies within Swinley Forest, which forms part of the Crown Estate and is located to the east of Swinley Road. This plan shows the application site within its wider context. It lies in the far southeast of the borough, on the east side of a large area of countryside separating Bracknell, Ascot and Bagshot. The site is very close to the boundaries between Bracknell Forest and the Royal Borough, which runs along there, and between Bracknell Forest and Surrey Heath, which runs along here. So it's very close to this corner of the borough. The Ascot to Bagshot railway line provides a distinctive boundary between the forest and the residential area of South Ascot. To the west of the site, the Swinley Road provides a north-south route, which provides a border to the forest on the western side. In addition to the forested areas, the other main uses within this area of countryside are two golf courses, Swinley Forest to the south and the Berkshire Golf Course to the west. The application site extends to 12.9 hectares and is accessed from the A332 at Swinley Road, at this point here, where it joins Buttersteep Rise. Buttersteep Rise in turn leads to a gravelled track that forms part of the network of tracks crossing Swinley Forest, facilitating its use for forestry purposes. Permission is sought for a 12-month period, including a 4-month site preparation phase, a 4-month filming phase, although filming itself would only take place on 30 days over this 4-month period, and finally a site clearance and reinstatement phase, which is anticipated to take no longer than 2 months. The remaining 2 months allow for slippages in this timetable. This plan shows the film set in the northern part of the site. To the southwest of the film set would be the unit base area. This would incorporate a porter cabin, toilet facilities, water supply, generators, storage and waste facilities. During the filming period, 2 marquees for costumes and dining would also be provided. Parking would be accommodated within the main set area here and here. However, during the filming itself, it would be provided in the unit base, and overflow parking would be provided within a ride to the southeast of the main site here. The film set would comprise temporary buildings and fencing. This plan shows an indicative layout of the set. And this plan shows examples of the proposed buildings. There would be multiple examples of each building except for the largest one. The details provided are illustrative at this stage, but the maximum height of any building would be 7.8 meters. As mentioned in the supplementary report, a drawing has been submitted showing the widening of Buttersteep Rise at its junction with Swinley Road, which is here, blowing up in more detail in that inset there, and also the creation of 2 passing bays there and there. I will now take you on a quick tour of the site. We start at the junction of Swinley Road and Buttersteep Rise. This is the view looking north along Swinley Road towards Ascot. And this is the view looking south towards Bagshot. We now move to the end of Buttersteep Rise and look back towards Swinley Road. This slide is taken from the same position as the last one, but looking into the forest, with the members' car park on the left and the main access track into the forest through the double gates on the right. Moving past the car park and entering the forest, this is a view along the main access track towards the site. Moving further on down the access track, this shows the ride where the unit base would be accommodated. I will now take you on a circular route clockwise around the film set site. Starting at the northwest corner, this is a view along the northern boundary. I should point out that these photos were taken before the site was cleared, but after the application was submitted. Moving south, this is a view across the site from halfway down the eastern boundary. Reaching the southeast corner, this is a view of the proposed overflow car park to be used during the filming, and it shows the heather margins that were of concern to the biodiversity officer. Finally, we move south from the set to the southern boundary of the forest, looking south towards the nearest residential property on Bowden's Ride. At the advisory meeting, members asked whether the proposed passing bays on Buttersteep Rise would result in an impact on trees. Working. Right, can't seem to do that. I just want to go back to an earlier picture that I showed you. Load this up. Right, so this is a view down Buttersteep Rise, showing where the parking bays would go. There would be one somewhere in this area here. It's difficult to be precise. And another one would be further down on that side. This picture clearly shows that there are many trees within the grass verge along Buttersteep Rise. However, the drawing, which shows the details of the passing bays, doesn't show any trees, and no arboricultural implications assessment has been submitted. It is likely that the proposed highway works would have a detrimental impact on these trees. However, without full information, the extent of any impact cannot be quantified or adequate mitigation provided. If members decide to approve this application, conditions should be imposed requiring full details of existing trees, any impact of the highway works on these, and how this impact could be mitigated. In conclusion, the proposed development constitutes inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. Government policy requires planning authorities to give substantial weight to any harm to the Greenbelt. Inappropriate development should only be approved if very special circumstances exist that outweigh any harm by reason of its inappropriateness and any other harm resulting from the proposal. The applicant has suggested that very special circumstances exist which need to be weighed against the harm identified. These include the temporary nature of the impact and the economic benefits provided by the proposal. Officers agree that the temporary nature of any harm to landscape character or the enjoyment of the forest as a valued recreational resource by local residents are important material considerations. As the applicant has made clear, This filming proposal would be a one-off with no requirement by the applicant for any future filming. However, the applicant has also stated that the film and television industries have grown over the last decade, and it has become increasingly necessary to provide additional space. It anticipates that these industries will continue to grow and suggests that this site provides an opportunity to counter the shortage of studio capacity, which is hindering the industry's growth. These considerations are not specific to this application, but relate to the industry generally. In view of this, although the impacts from the current application would not be permanent, the acceptance of this as a very special circumstance would make it very difficult to refuse future applications for a similar development, perhaps from a different company, maybe a year or two down the line, either on this site or another Greenbelt site. A similar argument could be made in respect of economic benefits. Unless the economic benefits from this proposal are so unique or significant, a similar argument could be used for other developments in the Greenbelt, where economic benefits are cited as a very special circumstance. For these reasons, officers do not consider that the very special circumstances advanced by the applicant are sufficient to outweigh the harm caused by the development's inappropriateness, its impact on the open character of the Greenbelt, its harm to the character of the countryside, or its failure to demonstrate that adequate parking can be provided, with consequent potential impacts on highway safety and biodiversity. The recommendation therefore remains for refusal for the reasons as set out in the agenda as amended by the supplementary report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Trevor. Members, do you have any questions over and above those questions that were answered during the advisory committee meeting? Councillor Mrs. Hayes.
Just one, sir. May I ask the officer that he just brought up the question of certain trees. This whole area operates as an entirely commercial forest, does it, or does it not? And with conditions that would allow us to be able to look at that tree area within the paperwork.
You're muted again, Trevor.
Apologies, Chairman, you're on mute.
So am I. Yeah. Not.
Can you hear me now? Just to answer the question from Councillor Hayes, the trees that we're talking about are on Butter Street Rise. These do not form part of the commercial forest, but are part of the access route. They are mostly large Scots pines, and I do not believe that they're part of the commercial plantation. We are going, we would suggest that conditions could be imposed to mitigate the harm, but it's unlikely that they would completely remove all impact, because as I showed you from the slide, there are quite a lot of them, and it'd be very difficult, I think, to avoid all of them completely.
Mr. Brassard.
Thank you, Chairman. Just unmute myself. In fact, this is a question for the Highways Officer, if I can, Chairman. Yes?
Yeah.
Right, fine. If I can, at the bottom of page 17, towards the end, the penultimate paragraph, there's reference to 10 metre rigid HGVs. Now then, is there in fact a weight limit in terms of 10 metre HGVs? I only worry because potentially HGVs can go up to 32 tonnes. So can the Highways Officer tell me what would be the maximum weight for a 10 metre rigid?
Through you, Chairman, hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
I can't give you the weight off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up, unfortunately, Councillor. I'm not aware of it. I think I'd like to understand what your concern about the weight is. Is it in relation to moving along Buttersteep Rise, or I'm just not clear on what the weight issue has behind your question.
Well, I think in that case, then it's the potential damage that could occur when you're actually talking about, say, a 32-ton truck as opposed to one. No. Now, to be fair, I believe that in the previous report, there was reference to, I think, 7.5 tons going up to maybe 18 tons. Could that be the figure as opposed to 32 tons?
That is a more realistic figure. You are quite correct. The references in relation to the size of the vehicles and the concern that I've taken in relation to ensuring that they can operate safely is around basically the scale and size of the road available for such vehicles of those size in length, and the way that they track to utilise Buttersteep Rise and Swinley Road. You're quite right. It is certainly the HGV side, the larger HGVs that will be greater than 18 tonnes and can carry greater weights. In terms of damage, obviously Buttersteep Rise is a private road. Swinley Road is a main A road, and so the construction of that road is built to take HGV traffic, although it is obviously quite an old road in itself, but it is likely to be built at a much more significant standard than Buttersteep Rise. Obviously, in terms of damage that's done to Buttersteep Rise, obviously that becomes a private matter between the owner of the road, which may well be the Crown Estate, and the person obviously undertaking the work along it or the use of it that may create that damage. I'm not aware if there's any agreement between those parties.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. A couple of questions from me. Are those trees that the officer referred to, are they protected trees?
No, Chair, they're not.
Thank you. And is there any specific weight limit along Buttersteep Rise that's been issued?
Through you, Chair, that's probably for me. I'm
Yes,
going to guess. Not as far as I'm aware, as a private road, and obviously has served the forest in some respect. It is likely to just be controlled literally by the nature of the uses down there. Very limited residential uses, the car park we know for members, and perhaps the odd vehicle that does go for forestry use. So yeah, I think it would be unlikely to have any form of weight limit, maybe something informally by the Crown.
Okay, and that leads me on to my third question, which is, as this is a commercial activity, we would have expected to see large vehicles going down there to undertake part of the logging activity, would we?
Through you, Chair, I believe they have referred to that. I believe that was in the latest piece of information that was submitted just at the advisory meeting that you had previously. It is possible it could be used. There are other accesses to the site, the wider site as well, that probably could be used, to be fair, as well.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from members? I understand we do have councillors Hayden and Gore, and I incorrectly told councillors that they couldn't participate, which I was wrong. I'm sorry to Peter and Moira. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Okay, fine. As there are no more questions, it falls to me to move the officer's recommendation, which is on page
19, Chairman.
Thank you. If I have a seconder.
I'll second.
Okay, Councillor Virgo.
Sorry, I was confused. I don't want a second. I withdraw that. I withdraw it.
Okay, fine.
Sorry, it's my fault.
Does any other member wish to second? Okay.
Sorry, for clarity, the second the recommendation for refusal.
To refuse, yes.
Then I will second it, Chairman. Yes, sorry, I will second the recommendation for refusal.
Thank you. Okay, would any member wish to speak? Seconder wish to speak?
Just very briefly, Chairman, this is a very comprehensive report. We've covered obviously the highways issues in great detail. There are issues with regard to biodiversity, which I believe can be resolved through conditions. I have concerns, and my main concern...
Actually, sorry, Councillor Brassard.
Yes.
You're speaking for the refusal, yes?
Yes, I am. Yes, I
Okay,
am.
thank
Yes,
you.
I
Okay,
am.
fine. Thank you.
My concern is to do with the off-site parking. I appreciate that they have had a look, the applicant has had a look at using the Lapland facility or the Ascot racecourse, but so far neither of those sites have come up. And my concern is that the private cars are actually going to be entering and reparking on the site itself, which I think is going to lead to congestion, and there will be safety issues. There's also, Chairman, very briefly, the very special circumstances. I don't believe that those very special circumstances have been demonstrated, and it's for that reason that I support the recommendation for refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Brossard. Any other member wish to speak? Okay, I'll sum up in that case.
I'd like to speak. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, right. So I didn't see your hand.
Sorry.
That's
Okay.
all right. Okay, Councillor Virgo.
Mr. Chairman, I am against the recommendation. I apologise for the confusion before. And the reason is this. I've read this report and we've had a long discussion on the advisory panel. I think, Mr. Chairman, sorry, I'm getting feedback, but I'll keep going. I think this is a huge benefit for the borough as as a whole. I think it will give a tremendous financial boost to this area. And quite frankly, Mr. Chairman, I think you made it terribly clear in the questions you asked. It is a commercial forest. And in fact, if anyone has been there on site, if you go further down that road to the roundabout, which is not very far away, considerable amounts of trees have been felled for a commercial reason. So I cannot see in my mind why we should refuse this application. As I said, I think as a film unit, they will look after it. And the Crown Estate are very good masters of that estate, and they will be on site to see everything is looked after properly. So if I may say, I would like to refuse this, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you want to give notice an alternative motion? Is that right? Okay, Councillor Mrs. Hayes.
So I agree with what has just been said and would have been saying it myself. I do feel that this is, as it is, this is a commercial site, sir. It has been noted that way. The parking of the areas of people when they come to visit is in a private area allowed by the Crown, and they could actually stop that also. We discussed a substantial amount of this at the advisory, and I will state that should it fall, I do have an intention to come with another recommendation, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Hayes. Any other member wish to speak? Okay, I'll sum up in that case. Members, what we're looking at here is a temporary planning permission. It's not a permanent planning permission. So any harm or perceived harm to the greenbelt is of a temporary nature. We have to remember that this area is a commercial activity with normal tree felling taking place all the time as part of that commercial activity. The officer mentioned that this was a useful piece of land that is enjoyed for recreation by the local residents. Unfortunately, there is no public access to this land outside of the public access allowed by permission of the Crown Estate. And of course, they could remove that permission at any time because it is effectively private estate with no right of way. We have to look at the economic benefits, which may outweigh the temporary harm to the greenbelt, and a balance has to be decided by members. The officer also mentioned that if members were minded to allow this application, it would create a precedent. Members, we always hear and we always say and we reiterate all the time that every single application should be judged on its own merits, and therefore this does not create any precedent over and above this temporary planning permission that we're seeing here this evening. I'm now going to put the application to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Angel.
Against refusal.
Councillor Brossard.
For refusal.
Councillor Dudley.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Hayes.
Against.
Councillor Virgo.
Against.
That's 4 against and 1 for, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Hayes, you gave notice an alternative motion. Would you like to propose your alternative motion?
Yes, sir. I have an alternative motion before us. It is a very long one, and therefore I would not want to be reading this completely
Okay.
out.
Do we have it? Do we have it on the screen that we can see? Can an officer put it up for us?
It does cover all points. For
Okay,
the
but
motions.
if we're going to vote on it, we need to see it. Trevor, have you got the alternative motion on your? Is Trevor still with us?
Yeah, yes. Sorry, I'm just trying to get it up at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Because it's such a long alternative motion, it's important that members can see the motion and be able to vote on it with full knowledge of what they're voting for.
Just coming up now.
Okay, thank you. No, it's all right, Trevor. I'm not rushing you. I realise how difficult that is.
Right. Is that?
I think that's
I'm sharing the wrong screen.
Yeah, that's your speech, I think.
Let's try that one. Is that better?
No, we're still seeing your speech. I'm not seeing anything at the moment. Thank you very much, Trevor. Yeah, we can see that.
Is that okay now?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, if you could, members, can you see that? Okay. You could just scroll down a little bit for us, please, Trevor. Okay, and again. Yep. Good, got the tree conditions in there, good. Okay. Yeah, keep down the informatives. Okay, there's Banksman being used, good. Members, are you happy that you've seen the full motion?
Yes, Chairman.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm happy to second that motion. Councillor Mrs Hayes, do you want to speak for your motion, or do you want us to just take it as read?
Take it as read, sir.
Thank you very much. Does any member wish to speak? Let's go to the vote then, please.
Thank you. Councillor Angel.
For the motion.
Councillor Brossard.
Against the recommendation.
Councillor Dudley.
For.
Councillor Mrs Hayes.
For.
Councillor Virgo.
For.
That's 4 for and 1 against, Chair.
Motion is carried. Thank you very much indeed. We move on then to agenda item 6, which
Chair,
yes.
sorry to interrupt, Chair. Can I just advise that you also delegate to the head of planning that the reasons for granting this application be drafted and inserted into the planning permission?
Certainly. Councillor Mrs Hayes, as mover of that motion, are you happy that we do that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yes, that's fine then. Indeed.
Thank you
very much. Thank you for correcting us on that. Okay, agenda item 6, which is Kenrick, Chavey Down Road, Winkfield, on page 49 of our agendas. Okay, that's Basha. Thank you, Basha.
Good evening, Chairman. Basha Polnick speaking, and I'm presenting this item. So this application relates to Kenrick, which is a bungalow on the east side of Chavey Down Road. And the proposal is for an extension in this area here. So this site plan, oh, sorry, I've just realised I'm not sharing my screen. So we'll start again. Okay,
Lovely.
so hopefully you can see that.
We can indeed.
So
Thank
this
you.
is the extension to the front here, and we can see on this plan the relationship with the two immediate neighbours, Papillons to the north and Fiddler's Green to the south. This is the existing front elevation and the existing layout. So this is the front of a property at the moment with a single-storey rear projection. And this is the proposed front elevation. And here we have the proposed side elevation. So this side elevation would be facing Fiddler's Green to the south, and this one would be facing north. And this is the proposed floor plan. So just to show you some photographs to show you the relationships on the ground. Here we have the application site, and this is Papillons. And here we can see some windows. So there is a kitchen door, a kitchen window, and a bathroom and WC window just on the other side of this wall, which forms the boundary. This is a closer view of that. And here we have the application site. This is the property on the other side, Fiddler's Green. And this is a view looking north. What I'd like to point out is that we can see that the majority of these bungalows do have gables that front the road. So adding a gable to the extension would be in keeping with the character of the area. And then this is a view looking the other side with Fiddler's Green here and the adjoining property, Neuchatel. So the primary considerations in this case are the impact on the living conditions of neighbours and the impact on the character of the area and the street scene. So whilst the extension would be forward of the property to the south, Fiddler's Green, there will be a separation distance of 11.72 metres, and as such, the relationship is considered to be acceptable. With regards to the property to the north, Papillons, this has a kitchen door and window in the side elevation facing the application site with a bathroom and WC window beyond. It is acknowledged that there will be some loss of light to the kitchen, and a loss of light assessment has been undertaken, which takes into account the level change of about just over 20 centimetres between the two properties. And this is indicated on page 55 of the agenda. The diagram on page 55 also indicates that the extension does not breach the 25-degree line. And as such, the loss of light would not be so adverse to warrant a reason for refusal on these grounds. Shadow diagrams have also been provided, and these show that in the worst case scenario, The longest shadows are cast in December, and the impact of the extension is negligible. It also highlights that the existing wall casts more shadow on the side elevation of Papillons than the extension itself, except on 21st of December, which is the shortest day, in the morning of that day. So these, I can certainly zoom in if you wish me to do so, but there are a number of these diagrams showing existing and proposed at different times of the shortest day, and also on all other dates as well. I also have at the end of the presentation here photographs taken by the neighbour or provided by the neighbour. This is taken just outside the side elevation facing the application site, and here we have a photograph taken from the kitchen. So we have the kitchen window there and the kitchen door. Then this is a view taken from the other side, and the bottom one is a view looking down the side of that property with the application site on the right hand side. In terms of the street scene, the properties in the immediate vicinity are accessed from a lay-by and are predominantly bungalows or chalet style dwellings with ridge lines at 90 degrees to the road, resulting in gable ends facing the road, whereas the ridge line of the application site runs roughly parallel with the road. The design of the extension is such that it would introduce a gable which would face the road, adding a feature which is characteristic in this line of properties. The ridge line of the extension is lower than the main ridge, and as it spans across approximately half of the width of the property, it is considered to be subordinate to the main dwelling in accordance with the recommendations within the design SPD. The proposed materials would also match. In addition, the properties to the north are set further forward, as you can see on your site plans within the agenda, than the application property, and have a fairly uniform building line, whereas Kenrick and the two properties further south are set further back. And as such, the extension, and as the extension only spans about half the width of a property, visually, it bridges the gap and provides a balance between the two. Finally, adequate on-site parking is provided. So to sum up, due to the stagger in the properties, the position and design is considered to be satisfactory, and the loss of light and overshadowing of the neighbour to the north is within acceptable parameters. And as such, there is no reason to refuse the application. Therefore, the recommendation is to approve the proposal subject to conditions in the agenda and as amended by the supplementary report, which was circulated to the Planning Advisory Committee meeting in June. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Basha. I've got a question from Councillor Virgo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a couple of questions, actually. The first question, Basha, refers to the gable. Are there any other gables on this application apart from the one you have already stated, please?
Let me just go back to the plans. So the ridge line, as I said, runs parallel to the road, and obviously you will have gable ends on the side elevations.
So the answer is yes, there are some others.
Yes.
Okay. Second question, could you give me the percentage that this application will use in total as compared to the present building?
I don't have those figures to hand, but if we have a look at this plan in front of us, we can see that certainly the extension is subordinate compared to the existing floor space of the existing dwelling and the rear projection.
I think actually asked this question previously in the advisory a meeting that we had, and I think Alex gave the answer that it was 50%.
Okay, I will accept that.
And last question, the angle of the front elevation is different to the bungalow. Is that correct, please?
The proposed extension is proposed to be built at a slight angle because, as you can see, the boundary isn't entirely straight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Virgo. Councillor Mrs. Gore.
Thank you, Chair. Basha, you said in your presentation that you felt that the extension was subordinate in scale to the main dwelling. Can I ask you know, roughly to explain that? Because to my mind, the total width of the building that currently is 12.22 metres, and the extension's over half the size, with an extended extension of 9.4 metres. That surely suggests that it's not subordinate.
If we have a look at the proposed design and the elevations, the ridge line is not quite as high as the main ridge line. So we can see that there's a reduction in the height there. And also we can see that on the side elevation. And also, you know, it doesn't extend across the full width of a bungalow. So in my view, the design is subordinate.
Can I have another question, Chair, please?
By all means, Councillor.
Thank you. Yes, Basha, okay. I mean, in terms of the design SPD, which you referred to in your presentation, it does state that front extension should be small in footprint relative to the local building. I don't quite understand how that's your perception. Could you explain that?
Well, as we heard, Councillor Virgo was asking about the comparison of the footprint of the proposed extension and the existing bungalow. It is subordinate and it is smaller. Whilst it has quite a large projection, when we look at the actual street scene itself, as I said, there is a stagger between the front elevations of these properties, and it fits in very nicely, you know, bridging the gap between Papillons and Fiddler's Green, in my view.
If you look at the whole of the street scene, Basha, and you're just comparing the two adjacent properties, that the bottom of the cul-de-sac, the front gardens are very small and they sort of curve round, and so therefore the current existing line is in sympathy with the buildings.
Have you got a question, Councillor?
Yes, yes, I have. So I want to know, have you considered the buildings to the bottom of the cul-de-sac, which represent a different proportion to the two that you're examining, and give the whole of the area a balance?
If I can just ask you, which particular properties are you talking about?
Tuscany, Venture, Pendar.
Okay, so they're further north. I mean, certainly if we're looking at the ones that are immediately surrounding this area, and we can see this on this plan, as I said, you know, these properties have gable features that front onto the road, and the extension will not project any further forward than the front elevation of Papillons. And as I said, it sort of forms it bridges the gap between the two neighbouring properties.
Thank you, Basha.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, members? Okay, as there's no other questions, it falls to me to move the officer's recommendation, which is on page
20, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. If I have a seconder. There are no seconders, therefore that motion falls. Councillor Virgo, I understand you have an alternative motion to move on this one, is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do indeed have a motion, alternative motion for you. I would just like to make one point, Mr. Chairman, before I make that. And I think it's obvious from the questions we asked that we feel that this is an overbearing. I'm just
before you do that, can
Okay.
let's get a seconder for your alternative
sorry.
motion? Yeah. So can we get the alternative motion on the screen, please?
I'm just about to bring it up on the screen.
Thank you, Basha.
I'll second that motion. So.
Hopefully you can see that now.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just let the members read that, and then we'll get a seconder.
Councillor Hayes, yes, sir, I'll second it.
You're seconding. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Hayes. Okay, Councillor Virgo, do you want to move your motion?
I do. Before I move it, I'd like to add one policy, please, which is EN1. And the reason I want to move that is because of the questions that we've asked, but also I think were asked in the previous meeting. We think this is out of keeping in the street scene, and it will affect the neighbours, both in bulk and massing. And therefore, in that refusal, I would like to add, please, EN1.
Okay, seconder, do you accept that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That then becomes the substantive motion. Do you want to speak further to your motion, or do you want to?
I think I'd put it to the vote, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I just need to ask, Councillor
Yes,
Mrs. Hayes.
Put it to the vote, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any other member wish to speak? Okay, let's have the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Angel.
For the motion.
Councillor Brossard.
For the motion.
Councillor Dudley.
For.
Councillor Mrs. Hayes.
For.
Councillor Virgo.
For.
That's all in favour, Chair.
Thank you. That motion to refuse is carried. Okay, we'll move on to, and do I need to say that is also delegated? I'll just have a word with our legal Indy. Do I need to say if that's delegated?
No, sir, no,
that's
Chair,
fine.
that's
okay.
fine.
Got me nervous now. Right. Agenda item 7, which is 7 Flint Grove. Olivia.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just start sharing my screen now.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is an application for the erection of an outbuilding to be mixed use as a residential outbuilding in connection with the residential use of 7 Flint Grove, and to be used to provide phonics classes. The proposed classes there will be 2 classes of 45 minutes each day, Monday to Friday, excluding public holidays. These sessions will be run between 9:30 in the morning and 12:45 in the afternoon. All activity is proposed within the building. I'll start with the plans. So here we have the residential property, 7 Flint Grove. The existing site has a garage that can provide 1 parking space and then 4 off-driveway parking spaces as well. And the garden building is located behind the garage. The garden building is currently in location, so this application is part retrospective, although the phonics classes are not being held. And to show you some elevations, I'll show you some photographs of the building in situ as well. But here are the elevations of the building. And now we turn to photos. So these photos are taken from the surrounding gardens into the application site. And here we see the blue building, which is the subject of the application. These are photos taken from the neighbouring gardens, showing the neighbouring gardens. And here we have some photographs, snapshots of the road to demonstrate the parking provision within the road. So I'll just scroll through these. These were all shown at the advisory meeting. There have been no additional photos added. Okay, I'll go back up to the first plan to discuss the application. So in terms of the matters in consideration of this application, the proposed building, or the building that's proposed to be used for the phonics classes, is located within the rear garden of 7 Flint Grove and screened by the existing dwellings and the garage. As such, the building itself and its location is not considered to have an adverse impact on the character of the area. In terms of residential amenity, a noise survey has been submitted which demonstrates that there would be no significant impact on the surrounding neighbours for the enjoyment of their dwellings and their gardens by the use of the building, so long as the phonics classes remain within the building. As such, a condition is recommended to ensure that all classes remain within the building. In terms of parking provision, the current parking standards require 3 spaces for the residential dwelling, 2 spaces for the children to the visitors to the site in connection with the use, and 1 space for all members of staff. As a member of staff is an existing resident, it's not considered necessary to provide an additional space for the member of staff. If members are concerned that the members of staff may be increased or external members of staff may be brought onto the site, we can include a condition ensuring that all members of staff are existing residents of 7 Flint Grove. Taking this into account, it is not considered that the proposed use would have an adverse impact on the character of the area, the amenity of the surrounding residents, or highway safety. As such, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Olivia. I've got a couple of questions and I'll come to Councillor Brossard afterwards. You said that a noise survey has been undertaken. Now, my understanding is that part of the phonics class is the use of musical instruments. Is that correct? Would that noise survey have been taken with the doors to the building open or closed?
I will pass this question on to my colleague in environmental health who's reviewed the noise report.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I should have given notice, but it's just come to me.
Oh, I just see that a comment has been made by her. Both situations have been taken into account, open and closed.
Open and closed. Is that right, Jodie?
Yeah, both open and closed, yes.
Okay, because I noticed that there are no air conditioning ducts on this building. And during the summer, I would imagine that would get quite hot in there. So it's important that the survey is when the doors are open as well. Okay, thank you. Councillor Brossard.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. In fact, really my question follows on from your question about the doors, because there are also windows, and I believe that in the summer the likelihood is the windows will be open as well. Whether that would increase the noise against the doors being open, I must say it's maybe a subjective question that I'm asking. Okay. I think it's probably already been answered, Chairman. I've got actually, can I move on to the highways officer and make reference to page 64?
Should we get an answer to your first question?
Sorry.
Because I asked about the doors, but I didn't ask about the windows as well. I think it's important that we get clarity on this. Fine. Okay, Jodie, could you give us an answer? Would that have included also the windows being open as well?
The noise assessment specifically mentions the doors being open. It doesn't specify windows, but I mean, I think doors and windows being open will respond similarly.
Even though there's a larger area of escape.
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, in any case, the noise levels that they predicted are more than acceptable and very much a worst case scenario. So There's lots of room for manoeuvre. I really don't envisage an issue with noise.
Thank you very much.
And we have noise nuisance powers if there were, which I don't think there will.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Come back to you, Councillor Brossard.
Yes, I have a supplementary if I can, with your permission, Chairman. And this is on page 64, 9.43, and it's really a question, Chairman, for the Highways Officer. It says this would require half of parents to arrive by modes of transport other than private car. How are we able to specify which parents come by car and which parents use alternative means of transport? And what means of transport would you envisage that the parents would use if they don't come by car? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Following on, thank you, Vice Chair. That assessment of that 50% figure assumes the parking standards that we referred to, that Olivia referred to in her report, which are the closest we have to the proposed use, which are those for nursery, playgroup and creche, which require 1 space per staff member and 1 space per 4 children, which effectively equates to 2.5 spaces, but in this case we always round up, so we round up to 3, and 3 spaces for the residential. 3 spaces, in this case we have 6 children, and the applicant has included and their parents in the submission, and therefore if we assume that 3 of those arrive by car, then 3 would use potentially other modes of travel. In this instance, the site is situated within a built-up area with quite a number of residential streets in walking distance. It's not uncommon for parents to take their children to such classes, particularly preschool children, in a pushchair or similar to such classes on foot. And actually, it's often easier to do so than to put them in a car and take them a very short distance and have to put them in a car seat and take them out again, etc. Speak for a parent who's done similar. And similarly, it's within cycling distance of an even wider area within proximity to the site. And the applicant has proposed cycle parking with sufficient length to accommodate a tag-along trailer, or equally a bike could have a child seat on the back. There are also bus stops both at the end of Flint Grove at the junction with Holly Spring Lane, and there are further bus stops on Jigs Lane South, which provide a range of services. The closest stops on Holly Spring Lane are served by Service 299 that operates 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday and Friday, with 5 buses per day, all of which within the proposed time period for the site operations. The first arrival, which is 9:38, and a further set of bus stops on Jigs Lane South are about 550 metres, circa 8 minutes walk, which provide an hourly service number 53 through the day, and further services on buses 157 and 158, which are half hourly frequency with stops each side of the road.
Thank you. Can I follow up on your question, Councillor Brossard? You say the bus service arrives at 9:38. Is that the earliest one, or is
That's
there
the
one
earliest service that operates on that bus stop that is closest to the site, Chair? There are earlier services from the bus stops on Jigs Lane South.
But the classes are due to start at 9:30, so they wouldn't be able to use the 9:38 bus today.
Well, presumably, Chair, you have 2 options here. That there's obviously 2 classes, they're 45 minutes each. So it could well be that those people using the bus may choose to start a class later, or they may choose to agree with the class teacher that they arrive a few minutes late. I think that would be fairly acceptable to a teacher if somebody had to get the bus, but obviously they do have a choice of alternative bus stops. I can't speak for how people may or may not use the bus service available. I'm simply quoting what is available on site.
Sure, but we have to deal with exact measures here, and they're being asked to start at 9:30. If you're saying the earliest bus service from the closest bus stop is 9:38.
Yes, that would occur later than the first phonics class of the day.
So therefore, would it be a reasonable assumption to think that the early class would have more vehicle movements because there's no bus service available to the nearest bus?
It's possible.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Angel.
Thank you, Chairman. In the report, it talks about providing music classes. And I asked this question in the advisory meeting, do we know what sort of music is going to be given? Is it going to be musical instruments? Is it going to be records?
Yes, I've spoken to the applicant since the last advisory meeting, and they explained that in a typical class they will use musical instruments such as little bells or the egg shakers with the noise, the egg shakers, that kind of instruments, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And to be clear, in this house, this building, there is potentially therefore going to be 6 children, 6 adults, and a teacher. Could be 2 teachers.
Potentially, yes. Yes.
And if I heard earlier on, there's no air conditioning in this building. So in the high summer, we've got these musical instruments playing. We've got these people in there, and presumably the only means is going to be to open windows and doors to get any access to fresh air. Is that right?
That certainly would be a possibility. They could do that within the scope of this application.
And have we made any assessment on the number of traffic movements in this small cul-de-sac that will take place?
If we accept the assumption that 50% would arrive by modes other than the private car, then there are 2 sessions per day, and therefore you have an arrival and departure to each session for 6 children, therefore 3 cars. So that's 6 movements, and the same again for the second session of the day. So that will be 12 movements. Those movements occur outside of the peak hours on the highway network, and they would also occur outside of the peak drop-off and pick-up times for typical school opening times.
Thank you. I don't share the number of people coming by cars.
Debate, that is. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Chair.
One further question from me. Notwithstanding any potential on-street parking, am I right in saying that with the spaces provided is substandard from our policy?
Nominally, yes, Chair. The question here is the one that Olivia raised at the beginning in her presentation. Our parking standards require for the most similar land use 2.5 spaces, so we round to 3, and then 3 spaces for the dwelling, so that equates to 6 spaces. However, and Olivia mentioned this could be conditioned, the member of staff lives on site at 7 Flint Grove, and therefore it can be reasonably assumed that their parking is already catered for within the residential provision, and therefore it would be difficult to substantiate that the parking was substandard if a condition requiring the teaching staff to be residents on site was imposed.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Virgo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You can see me, I can't see myself. Can I just follow up, please, on the music questions? 2 points, really. One is, in the assessment, did we actually do any real assessment, or was that all on computer analysis? To Jodie.
Hi, so the noise assessment has been, rather than an actual noise monitoring, because the classes are not in place, it's being carried out based on knowledge of typical noise levels for the types of activities that they've proposed. I think the noise levels are based mostly on the sort of speech and singing and music that they'll be playing in the background, but it's at quite a high level that they've based their predictions on, and probably a higher level than you would ordinarily have in a class with preschoolers, as they state in the assessment. So in all likelihood, the noise levels will be lower than the worst case that they've made their predictions based on.
Okay, thank you, but it wasn't done for real. Can I ask the second question? And that is, it's gone on my mind now, haven't. Yes, if they decided, presumably there's no restriction on musical instruments, actually, although you've talked about little bells, there is actually no restriction.
There's no condition on restricting the type of instruments.
Okay, so in fact, they could be drums. I mean, they could be, in theory.
We could impose a condition saying that no drums could be used, but,
sure, but there isn't one.
But I'm not sure that would be reasonable given that we don't know how noisy the drums actually would be. So it'd be probably better to consider that under environmental health legislation should a noise issue occur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Virgo. Any other members have any questions? Okay, so it falls to me to move the officer's recommendation, which is on page
21, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. If I have a seconder. As there's no seconder, I understand that Councillor Angel has an alternative motion. Councillor Angel, do you want to move your alternative motion?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would.
Hold on, let's just get it up. Thank you. Could you just make that a little bit bigger for us, please, Olivia? Thank you. That's lovely.
Thank you. And if there's a seconder?
Well, let's just, so you're moving the motion as laid out on the screen, yes?
I am, yep.
Right, I'm happy to second that, thank you. Do you want to say anything?
Well, I just want to really repeat a little bit of what I said in the advisory meeting. This is a very small cul-de-sac of 12 houses. It's a residential area quite clearly, and this is a commercial venture. And I truly don't believe that you are going to see 3 of each class parent arriving by any other means than a car. He's certainly, in terms of bike queues, these are 4-year-old kids. I'd never seen around Bulbrook area, which is my ward, anybody cycling with a 4-year-old on their push bike. So I really have concerns about that assessment or taking that view. Chairman, I hope members will support this motion. The traffic movement is going to be colossal compared with what that small cul-de-sac experiences at the moment, and I think that's quite unnecessary. Whilst we have the means to stop that happening for those other residents, so I do recommend this to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Angel. As seconder, I'll reserve when I sum up. So any other member wish to speak? No? Okay. Then I'll sum up and use my seconders as well. This application is before us because the previous advisory committee unanimously voted against this application. And I haven't heard anything this evening that changes my mind. With regards to musical instruments, we did hear that instruments can be used, and we often as planning committee members have to balance, once a use is given on for a property, that use effectively would give carte blanche for any musical instrument to be used as part of a phonics class. Councillor Virgo mentioned drums, but we could go on and have a list of 300 musical instruments, and including trumpets and trombones. But so I'm quite concerned about giving carte blanche permission on that respect. I'm also quite concerned about the substandard parking, although a traffic officer did mention that one of the teachers is a resident of the house. Nevertheless, this is substandard, and it could that situation of one of the residents being the teacher could change at any future time without recourse back to this planning committee. And especially seeing, as we've heard, that the earliest bus for the nearest bus stop is after the start of the first class, which is new evidence as far as I'm concerned. So I'm happy to second the alternative motion. Can we put it to the vote, please?
Thank you. Councillor Angel.
For the motion.
Councillor Brossard.
For the motion.
Councillor Dudley.
For.
Councillor Mrs Hayes.
For.
And Councillor Virgo.
For.
That's all in favour, Chair.
Thank you. The alternative motion is therefore carried. Okay, thank you very much indeed. That concludes the business of this planning committee. And just for information, all voting members were physical in a COVID safe atmosphere in a council chamber. And I thank you for your